Shane Smith was good in his Major League debut. Too bad reliever Penn Murfee wasn't, as he blew a 3-0 lead that I'll discuss on today's episode of Locked On White Sox.
You are Locked On White Sox, your daily Chicago White Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, I'm your host, Todd Welter, a lifelong Sox fan and the site expert of SouthsideShowdown.com, part of the Fanside Network. And also, I've covered Major League Baseball for outlets such as the Associated Press. And thanks for making Locked On White Sox your first listen every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Make sure to hit the like button on today's episode. Subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox if you've not done so already. And also follow or subscribe to the show at wherever you get your podcasts. Well, the White Sox 8-3 loss had a 2024 feel to it as the bullpen failed to protect a 3-0 lead and the Twins came back to pick up a victory. However, Shane Smith continued the hope that the starting pitching will be good this year, so let's discuss the youngster's stellar debut and the bullpen blowing it, even though manager Will Venable made the right call in the sixth to go to Penn Murfee. Then, Sox TV broadcaster John Schriffen had his first cringe moment of the season. Normally, I don't care about his embarrassing moments, but this time, he got rebuked on social media by the team's pitching director that I wanted to discuss. And then finally, instead of a way back Wednesday, I got to admit, I was loud wrong with Nick Maton DHing. All right, so White Sox starting pitchers went 28 innings and some change without allowing an earned run. That nearly historic run was something this team, should hang its hat on. As you can tell, if the Sox are going to win, they're going to need good starting pitching, solid defense, no base running mistakes, and some home runs. And, the bullpen has to protect leads or at least keep the game tied or at least, keep the game from, not getting out of hand. Kind of like what happened yesterday because, they got the good starting pitching, good base running. They got great defense, some timely hits. Bullpen, though, couldn't protect the lead. And even when it gave it up, bullpen couldn't keep the game in hand either. In Shane Smith's stellar big league debut, they've obviously got the talent. They've got the great start covered right there. I mean, he was backed by some really good defense. And again, there was a home run by Nick Maton that was hit so hard, the ball may have landed in Gary, Indiana. However, the bullpen just could not protect the lead as Penn Murfee allowed the Twins to score 5 runs. That's 5 runs with 2 outs in the 6th inning. Very, very 2024-ish, despite everything else not feeling like that historically awful season. I mean, if this was really, truly a 2024-ish loss, you would have had about 2-3 errors, a couple base running gaffes, no runs, or maybe like 1 or 2 runs. Although it would have been nice for the Sox offense to put up more than 3 runs. Although the Twins bullpen, they've got some darn good arms that make scoring late hard. I mean, they've got some power guys out there. And, some might question the decision to lift Smith after 5 2/3 innings and 73 pitches. Some might even question why did he go out for the 6th. But he was dealing through those 5 2/3 innings. So that's why he went back out for the 6th. And he was also through 64 pitches once he got, to the 5 2/3 innings. So, you could see like, well, why, I get the question, but the logic was correct. The process was correct. Penn Murfee, who has been good in spring and his first 2 outings against the Angels, just didn't execute. So sometimes it isn't Pedro Grifol all over again, as making the correct decision to call upon your bullpen just can be ruined by a reliever not executing. That's what happened. I had somebody on X, formerly Twitter, point that out on the Locked On Sox account. Well, I don't think you should have been pulled. Well, Smith was through the 3rd time in the order. That was another thing that was totally looked over. And he threw 8 of his last 9 pitches were balls. So they did the right call to go to Penn Murfee. He just didn't execute. So sometimes you can make the right call and a reliever not executing. Those both can be true at the same time. It doesn't mean your manager made a mistake. But man, baseball needs the ABS challenge system because a poor miscalled strike 1 that turned into ball 4 on Byron Buxton, that started the entire 6th inning collapse. But first, let's circle back to Smith, who was just excellent. I think Tom Nestigo of TJ Stats on X had a nice breakdown of Smith's performance. I've got the tweet up for those watching on YouTube. Shane Smith made his MLB debut today. The number 1 overall pick from the past Rule 5 draft, impressed this spring and earned a spot in the rotation. His revamped changeup was looking excellent, but struggled to put away batters. Congratulations. And you can see, he only gave up 2 earned runs, and those were actually technically he did not give up the earned runs. That was Murfee blowing it in the 6th. He basically just cruised. His velocity was around 95. I think he topped out at 97. So, first of all, though, my apologies, folks, if I jinxed the Sox no earned run streak. As I said yesterday, it was likely the rookie pitcher making his debut would give up some runs early, fighting off the jitters. And, well, he actually passed the early nerves test with flying colors. He did allow the leadoff walk and a 2-out single, but he got out of the jam. So that was my hope was, okay, he's going to have some jitters. He's going to be a little excited. I mean, we saw him, but you just didn't want to see him give up like 9 runs like he did in his first spring training start. I mean, that was definitely a nervous guy out there. But he goes out and he strikes out Carlos Correa, and he gets out of the jam. He allowed, and then after allowing that Larnach single in the first, he goes on to retire 12 of the next 14 batters he faces before Byron Buxton came up with 2 outs in the 6th. Then things get off the rails as he walked Buxton on 4 straight pitches. However, if the ABS challenge system did exist like it did in spring training, ball 4 would have been called a strike. I mean, that was, granted it was high, but it was right in the zone. Probably would have been 3 inches down in the zone. You're looking at strike 1. And then who knows what happens. But instead, it started the collapse of a 3-0 lead. Smith walks Larnach on 5 pitches, and that is when the decision was made to lift Smith. And honestly, again, it's the right call. 3rd time through the order. 8 balls on his last 9 pitches. And pitching coach Ethan Katz relied to Will Venable, as the reports in Kyle Williams' Sun-Times write-up said, that he was seeing a dip in velocity over the last 9 pitches. It was just he kind of ran out of gas. And it's his first start of his big league career. So at the beginning of the season. So yeah, he's got to have to build up his endurance. And now you can nitpick that, getting Penn Murfee up in the pen was rushed. But again, if Smith's just suddenly running out of gas, you can't predict that. Like, it was really hard to anticipate because it was just very sudden. Second, catcher Corey Lee and Will Venable, they used every stall tactic imaginable for Murphy to get ready. Murphy just didn't execute as he allowed 4 bloop singles and he hit a batter. And the Twins coming back to win against the White Sox. Yeah, I've never seen that happen before. #sarcasm. Because this is what the Twins did all last season, is they score runs late in the game. And yeah, it's disappointing that the Sox let the Twins up off the mat, especially with them banged up and Carlos Correa playing awful. But if you give the Twins extra opportunities, they will pounce. This is still basically the same lineup that I believe scored most of their runs in the 6th inning and beyond. I know they did this to the White Sox at least 3 or 4 times last year. And I like what Kyle Williams wrote in the Sun-Times about the loss. And I really hope he is the full-time Chicago White Sox Sun-Times beat reporter, because he's an amazing writer. I really like his content. So I want to take a snippet out. Again, go to chicago.sun.times, I believe.com. You have to sit through their, either make a donation or you got to sit through their video, but read Kyle's stuff. Very, very good. So this is what he writes. After being lights out through 4 games, the starting staff streak without an earned run allowed ended at 28 innings. Pitching hurt the Sox in an 8-3 loss Tuesday night. Smith, whom the Sox chose number 1 in the 2024 Rule of 5 draft, resembled the pitcher the team saw in spring training when he had a 3.38 ERA in 4 starts. His first strikeout victim was 3-time All-Star Carlos Correa, who swung and missed on a 92-mile-per-hour changeup. Quote, "It's a day you look forward to for a very long time," Smith said of his debut, "and to finally have it happen is pretty surreal. Just a lot of excitement," end quote. The key stat for Smith was 4 walks. If he can't harness his stuff and be more consistent in the zone, then he'll find himself in some jams. Murphy, who allowed 3 earned runs without recording an out, said he was ready to pitch despite Venable getting him warmed up late in the 6th. The right-hander said he should have made an adjustment after his first pitch. He didn't believe he did a good job of getting the Twins off balance, even if some of the singles were softly hit. Quote, "They do all count, and it's tough when you got a starter like Shane in his debut," Murphy said. "He did so well. You want to come in and do a job and minimize the damage getting out of the inning for him," end quote. Walks were the main culprit in the loss. The Sox are a team with a small margin for error and can't give away bases. They've talked about how they need to play to win games, consistent defense, smart at-bats, and efficient pitching. Back to me in terms of the commentary. So the defense was good, as you had 2 amazing defensive plays from Brooks Baldwin. Heck, you even had Lenine Sosa flashing some leather out there. Offense provided some early runs, so you can't totally blame the bats. I mean, 3-0, but it just came down to 1 inning where it just shows how thin the margin for error is for the White Sox. They just can't give teams, extra opportunities. They just can't do it. They are that talent deficient. And then Harrison Bader, he provided the knockout blow in the ninth with a 3-run shot off of Jordan Leasure. Well, TV voice John Schriffen took a blow at Pitching Ninja, and he got rebuked by a lot of people. He got a lot of shade, including the team's pitching director. Let's discuss Schriffen's latest gaffe, and that's next on Locked On White Sox. Looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help you keep feeling fuller longer. And I'm a huge fan of the no shells variety. Perfect grab and go snack for busy days. Huge fan of the roasted and salted no shells. Wonderful Pistachios. It's just the perfect blend of roasted and salted that you get plenty of flavor without getting thirsty, that you need to down a gallon of water after eating them. I also love the honey roasted flavor as well. Tastes so good. But if you love cracking open every shell for that satisfying crunch, the in-shell options are also a classic favorite. Get snackin' and get crackin' with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. Welcome back to Locked On White Sox. I'm your host, Todd Welter. Make sure to hit the like button on today's episode and subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox if you've not done so already. And if you can't catch the show on YouTube, Locked On White Sox is available on all major podcast platforms, so make sure to follow or subscribe on places such as Apple or Spotify. Either way, get your 30-minute fix of Chicago White Sox baseball venting with me. All right. So you could point to John Schriffen jinxing the team's no-hit bid on Monday as his first gaffe, but that happens, okay? I know awful announcing gave him the business, but you have to point out at some point in the broadcast that, hey, a no-hitter's going on. You kind of have to make that clear, if maybe once or twice. And if the next batter drops a single in the next at-bat, that's called coincidence. So I'm not going to say that that is John Schriffen's first gaffe of the season or even give him the business. I mean, I know it's content and I know he kind of pushes it. Schriffen's actually first gaffe of the season was last night when he took a brief and I think unnecessary shot at Rob Friedman, better known as the pitching ninja on X. Now, normally I've avoided going over Schriffen's cringe moments he had last season. I think I have. I mean, if you want to point out that maybe I have covered him a little bit more, feel free. I mean, again, I try to block out as much of 2024 as I can. But I know last year I think I only talked about maybe the feud with the score once, because I resisted getting into it, getting into that discourse for a couple of reasons. One, I think he actually did a good job mingling with the fans during those tailgates. I think, meeting up with the Shy Sports Bums guys, going to their tailgates, meeting the fans. I actually think that that's a good thing. I mean, he's broadcasting to the fan base. So why don't you ingratiate yourself with the fans? Two, I think he does a good job of using his best assets, and that's Steve Stone, the best analyst in baseball. And three, if you didn't like Schriffen's Southside stand-up or Luis Robert Jr.'s growl, when he does the growl, or, when he was saying, oh, no, we ain't taking that type of thing, well, you could just turn on the radio broadcast and get the great Len Casper instead. There are options. So that's why I was like, I'm not going to totally always participate in this. And the other reason why is I've come to understand he is broadcasting to an audience of one, owner Jerry Reinsdorf. Because remember, Jerry ran off Jason Benetti because he didn't get his humor and he didn't like him. And he wanted somebody who was more dedicated to the broadcast, where Jason was doing more national games and that type of stuff. However, I am going to tackle this gaffe, and it was almost a throwaway comment too, because as an important member of, it was almost a throwaway comment. But the reason why I'm going to go over it is an important member of the White Sox front office publicly refuted Schriffen. That's why I want to touch on this. Probably the third most important person in a leadership position, pitching director Brian Bannister, he defended the pitching ninja on X after Friedman posted what Schriffen said. So first, here's the background context for you. Sox sideline reporter Brooke Fletcher, who's doing a great job, by the way, she was sharing a nugget on how pitchers are using basically baseball Twitter to look for new things. And then Schriffen brought up Pitching Ninja and said this, and this is Pitching Ninja also shared the video clip, but not authorized to reproduce the video clip there. So this is basically, he actually transcribed what Schriffen said. This is Rob Friedman at Pitching Ninja. For those watching on YouTube, I've got the screen grab of the tweet. Quote, Pitching Ninja is a real thing. He's become very popular. If that's how you want to find some info, go for it. It wouldn't be my source, end quote. And then Pitching Ninja said, appreciate it, LOL. So I went back to make sure, did I hear it right too? And Steve Stone basically said, hey, whatever you need to do, go, to find something in terms of grip, go for it. And then Schriffen kind of just played it off and just moved on. But what makes this a thing is Bannister, who GM Chris Getz keeps raving about having in the organization, went on X and posted this. This is at Brian Bannister X, and I made sure, other people have said that this is him, so this isn't a fake account. So at Brian Bannister X, this is what he replied to the at Pitching Ninja. I've got the screen grab up there for those watching on YouTube, but for those listening via Apple or Spotify, here's what he tweeted. Keep up the great work, Rob. Our sport needs more people that celebrate the awesomeness of what these guys do. You're one of the best things to ever happen to baseball. So here you have, basically after Getz and Venable, the most important person in the organization, probably outside of director of hitting Ryan Fuller and amateur scouting director Mike Shirley, giving Pitching Ninja an endorsement after the team's broadcaster took a brief shot. And the other thing is you're just like, here we go again, because Schriffen vowed to change this offseason in his interview with the Chicago Tribune. Yet here he is again, taking a shot at a beloved social media baseball guy. I mean, Rob Friedman has turned this into, I know pitchers love wearing the Pitching Ninja shirt. I believe he's now an analyst for Fox. He has been embraced. And I'm going to admit that I am making an assumption here. I am on my jump to conclusions, Matt. And it's another reason why I want to talk about this is I think Schriffen made what he thought might be a throwaway comment to please his audience of one. I think that is the one thing that I would just love for Schriffen to get better at. Stop always pleasing owner Jerry Reinsdorf. Now, yes, it's been reported. The Athletic reported when they were detailing how the franchise crumbled to the historic losing season that Jerry is so involved that he'll make calls to the booth in between breaks. So I get it might be hard, but stop. Try to stand up for yourself. And you and I all know too, Jerry doesn't like analytics because remember, it's research and development in this organization. And you and I all know Jerry doesn't like paying pitchers. So maybe John thought, hey, if I go after this dude who promotes pitchers and makes them look good and provides tape on how guys are pitching better, maybe my target audience will love it. And that is his target audience. It's Jerry Reinsdorf. That is who he's broadcasting to. Or, again, another assumption, maybe he prefers guys listening to their coaches. Because remember, one thing he kept harping on was he was in the clubhouse last year and he saw how hard those guys were working. That's one of the reasons why he said, we ain't taking that. And that, just absolutely embarrassing moment last year. And that's why he was also then, trying to basically polish the what of the 2024 season. But I don't know, again, why he exactly said it because he didn't clarify as he just quickly moved on. But if it's the use of coaches, he got absolutely rebuked by Brian Bannister. Brian Bannister just basically went out and said, Pitching Ninja, love you. And he should. Pitching Ninja is amazing. The guy is promoting baseball. Why are you taking a shot at a guy who's trying to make the game cool? And it just, again, it's another example of taking this broadcasting to an audience of one way too seriously. And that is the one thing I am definitely not a fan of Schriffen. Again, if you like John going out and hanging out at the tailgates, cool. That's fine. I just complimented him on that. And honestly, I don't care if he mispronounces Bill Veck's name and says Bill Veek or Bill Veck. People have been doing it for years. Growl and say South Side, stand up. Hey, he's trying new things. But you can broadcast to Jerry and still come across as a normal human being. You basically can come across as you're not sucking up. And don't take criticism so personally. I mean, that's one of the reasons why he had this feud with the Score. And even ESPN 1000, I remember, backing up the Score. the White Sox flagship, basically saying, John, yeah, you kind of have to do the song and dance. You kind of should go on The Score and ESPN 1000 and promote your broadcast. Because that's the other thing. Does John realize that he might not be broadcasting to a huge audience right now? And it's not just because the White Sox are losing. It's because CHSN is not on 50% of Chicago households. Just call the game, man, and provide some nuggets of information. That's all he needs to do. Just call the game, provide nuggets of information. You don't need to parrot the owner's disdain for where the game has gone. You're not Hawk Harrelson, nor do you need to be. Just call the game. Let Steve Stone have the opinions. That's his job. Your job, call the game and provide some nuggets of information. And even then, he doesn't even have to provide nuggets of information anymore, as they have Connor McKnight and Fletcher in that role. So just call the game. Now, normally I do a retro segment on Way Back Wednesday. However, I'm going to do how I've been loud wrong on Wednesday, as I got to admit Nick Maton DHing hasn't been a bad thing, and I want to discuss that after the break. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and you start building wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONMLB for half off your first year. Welcome back to Locked On White Sox. I'm your host, Todd Welter. Again, shout out to all the everydayers. I appreciate your loyalty. Please hit the like button on today's episode and recommend to your fellow Sox fans or baseball fans, friends, to subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox, or wherever they get their podcasts, as this show is available on all major podcast platforms. So, I can admit when I'm wrong. Although maybe I should just join former host of the show, Herb Lawrence, and keep pushing that Nick Maton should not be a DH. As he explained on X, formerly Twitter, at Ecknerwall23, the more bleep I talk about Nick Maton, the better he plays. He's a bum. And I shared the other tweet that he had where he was like, this is not a comment on the person because I'm sure he's a good cat, but the hashtag White Sox giving at-bats to Nick Maton, especially at DH, is ridiculous. He has an 84 WRC plus for his career. And like Herb, I was not a fan of Nick Maton DHing. I even did a short about it on Sunday. And guess what? Loud wrong. I was so wrong. Maton has homered twice in the DH spot. Once on Sunday, making me literally loud wrong that day, and once last night. And he absolutely blasted a rocket of a home run to right field. I mean, that thing would have landed on the Dan Ryan had it been hit to left field. I mean, that's how hard and fast, he hit it. I mean, I joked about it. I tweeted it under the Locked On Sox that I think that ball landed in Indiana. And shout out to Peyton. She tweeted back, yeah, I think it landed in Indianapolis. I mean, that ball was crushed. And if he keeps crushing home runs like that, fine by me. Now, he is just 2 for 9 on the season. But hold on here, and I'm not going to double down. He also has 3 walks on the season, and right now has a .417 on-base percentage. And with those 2 home runs, he has a .889 slugging percentage. Now, highly doubt that's going to sustain. But could he be a candidate for the Sox fighting another team's former prospect off the scrap heap who wasn't given a sufficient runway and could still be something? Try saying that fast 3 times. I think it's, if he keeps doing this, yeah, there's a good chance, because him making the roster didn't completely bother me, since if the Sox were not going to give infield prospects such as Chase Maidroth and Colson Montgomery the starting shortstop job, or, put him at second base, then they should have gone with, again, one of the relatively still young players that have not gotten a shot or much of a runway, such as Cal Mitchell, Tristan Gray, or Andre Lipsius, who they brought in as non-roster invites. These are the guys that the White Sox should be taking a look at. Because while we can gripe and complain that the White Sox did not spend any money in the offseason. It wasn't exactly the offseason to spend money on. What this offseason was about was, yes, accumulating assets from the Garrett Crochet trade, which I discussed about yesterday, about why, yes, it stunk to see him go. And it stunk to see him go for economic reasons because he just got a big bag of money that why not the White Sox give? But you did need to get the infusion of talent into your farm system. This is also was the offseason too. Go find it, see if Nick Maton can still be something because he just hasn't been given much of a run for whatever reasons. And he hit the best of those 4 in spring training. However, I do sort of want to double down on my logic for not wanting Maton to be the DH. It wasn't, again, just like Herb, nothing personal against Nick Maton. It was more of I just prefer Andrew Benintendi in that spot, especially coming off the broken hand injury he had in spring training. With the better defensive options you have in Michael A. Taylor, Austin Slater, and Travis Jankowski to put in the outfield. Because again, what is one of the things that the White Sox need to do well to have even a shot at winning? Play good defense. Who is not a very good defensive outfielder? Andrew Benintendi. And by the way, Benintendi, he is off to an amazing start. He went 3 for 4 yesterday with 2 runs, and his slash line is now 354, 421, 706. So that was more my logic in that I thought Benintendi is just more veteran enough to be able to handle the mental aspect of DHing because there is a mental aspect to it. Because again, if you have a bad at bat, again, if you're playing the field, you can just go out in the field, focus on playing on the field. As a DH, you just go back into the clubhouse and you wait and you wait and you wait. And also, I just didn't want to add any more stress to that healing hand. When you and I have seen, he's not very good when he's playing than less than 100%. It's just not one of those guys that even if he's feeling 90%, his 100% of that 90% is better than somebody's 100%. And yes, I know I just gave you Scott Steiner math. However, hand seems healed up with how he's raking to start the season. Seems locked in, just like Maton has been when he's DHing. Well, that wraps up this edition of Locked On White Sox, and I'll be back tomorrow to discuss the final game of this 3-game set against the Twins. Feel free to leave comments about today's discussion regarding Shane Smith's stellar start getting ruined by Penn Murfee, John Schriffen taking a shot at the pitching ninja and getting rebuked by Brian Bannister, and me being loud wrong on Nick Maton DHing. You can leave them at the episode page on YouTube, X, formerly Twitter, at ToddJDub, or at Locked On Sox, or you can email me at lockedonwhitesox@gmail.com. Have a great day, and I will see you tomorrow.